Italian dictator Benito Mussolini died on the 28th of April 1945, shot by communist partisans along with his longtime mistress Clara Petacci. He had been captured disguised in a German greatcoat and steel helmet in the back of a German Air Force truck headed for Austria, Mussolini's group of fascists tagging along with the Luftwaffe convoy in an effort to get out of northern Italy safely as Axis resistance crumbled in the last days of the war. The story is that Mussolini, a spent force, was held overnight with his mistress in a farmhouse before orders arrived for the partisans to summarily execute him. Orders that were carried out at the entrance to the Villa Belmonte in the village of Giuliano di Mezzagra. The partisans then transported the bodies of Mussolini and Petacci, along with some executed fascist ministers, to the Piazzale Loreto in Milan, dumping them in the early hours of the 29th of April 1945. A huge crowd of Milanese gathered, venting their fury on the corpses, beating them, spitting and urinating on them, until partisans had the corpses hung upside down by their ankles from a Standard Oil petrol station forecourt. This form of hanging used in Italy since the Middle Ages to stress the infamy of the deceased. It was also done to protect the corpses from the mob. US troops eventually intervened at 2 p.m., ordering the partisans to cut the bodies down. The corpses of Mussolini and Petacci were loaded onto a truck and driven under guard to the Milan city morgue for examination. First, they were carefully photographed by a US Army photographer. I can't show you these photographs, which are in color due to their disturbing content. However, you can look them up online. The photographs of an extremely graphic nature were later published. The next day, 30th of April, Mussolini's corpse was autopsied at the Institute of Legal Medicine in Milan. The cause of death was quite obviously gunshot wounds, though for some reason 2 different numbers of bullets were noted, either 7 or 9. Death was caused by damage to the heart by 4 bullet impacts. Interestingly, the official report makes no mention of the caliber of the bullets removed from Mussolini's body, which would have helped to settle the issue of who exactly shot Mussolini and which weapon was used. Mussolini's head was opened and his brain removed for study. Sections of brain tissue would eventually be sent to the United States for study, in the hope of finding some physical reason for Mussolini's behavior. The Allies had long suspected that Mussolini was suffering from syphilis, but examination of his brain tissue disproved this thesis. The Americans now lost interest in Mussolini's remains, which were buried in a simple wooden coffin in an unmarked grave at Musuccio Cemetery north of Milan. But Mussolini was not destined to lie in peace for long. His mortal remains still possessed an allure to those who clung to fascism in post-war Italy. Domenico Lecchesi, a right-wing journalist, decided with 2 friends to exhume Mussolini. The date they chose for this robbery was Easter Sunday 1946, the eve of the first anniversary of Italy's liberation by the Allies. We can only presume the state the corpse was in after so many months in the earth, but Lecchesi and his companions completed the grim task and loaded the mouldering coffin onto a small truck and disappeared. What to do with the corpse, a holy relic for Mussolini's followers, of which there were still plenty in Italy? What better place for a relic than a church? Many priests and monks remained sympathetic to fascism in the north of Italy, and some were undoubtedly outraged by the treatment of Mussolini's mortal remains, first by the Milan mob and then by the Americans. Lecchesi delivered the corpse into the hands of 2 sympathetic priests. Before he left, Lecchesi placed a note on the coffin that read, quote, "Finally, O Duce, you are with us. We will cover you with roses, but the smell of your virtue will overpower those roses." End quote. Mussolini's body now began a bizarre post-mortem tour of northern Italy as the corpse was moved every few weeks to another religious property as the Italian police searched for it. For 16 weeks, this cat-and-mouse game continued until, in August 1946, the authorities obtained information that the body was hidden at the Certosa di Pavia, a monastery outside Milan. Police raided the monastery and found Mussolini's body, which by now was missing one of its legs. The police arrested and charged 2 Franciscan friars for helping the fascists to conceal the corpse. Instead of simply cremating Mussolini's remains, the Italian authorities now did what the fascists had done. They hid Mussolini's corpse in a religious house. Mussolini was taken to the Capuchin monastery at Cerro Maggiore and placed in a vault where it remained, its identity known only to the authorities and the trusted monks for 11 years. In the meantime, the Mussolini family had demanded that the body be returned to them. The government successfully put them off until 1957, when new Prime Minister Oddone Zoli changed the government's position. Zoli knew Mussolini's widow, Rachele, and he needed the support of the right in Parliament. Therefore, he agreed to release the remains of the dictator to his family. Prime Minister Zoli agreed that Mussolini would be laid to rest in his hometown of Predappio. The Mussolini family already had a substantial crypt in Predappio, and so it was on the 1st of September 1957 a grand interment was held, with Mussolini's remains being installed in a stone sarcophagus as supporters gave the fascist salute. It is quite extraordinary that today a place of pilgrimage to Mussolini and fascism exists, a place that attracts huge crowds every 28th of April on the anniversary of Mussolini's death in 1945. There are fascist marches, imagery and speeches, and the old songs. Mussolini's grave is watched over by a white marble bust of the Duce flanked by fasces, relics associated with him on display in glass-covered alcoves beside the sarcophagus. Mussolini's tomb has become a tourist attraction as well as a place of pilgrimage for fascists, something unthinkable regarding, for example, Adolf Hitler, and particularly extraordinary for a dictator who fell from power so dramatically and whose philosophy has been so officially rejected. In fact, unlike Hitler, Mussolini's descendants continue to play prominent roles in Italy. His granddaughter, Alessandra, is a member of the European Parliament, representing the centre-right Forza Italia party, while her son, Romano Benito Mussolini, known as Mussolini Jr. to the Italians, great-grandson of the dictator, is a famous footballer for Lazio. He has said that he has no interest in politics. Another of Mussolini's great-grandchildren, Rachele Mussolini, is also a politician and elected councillor for the far-right Brothers of Italy party. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.